This is the podcast between an old school mentor and a digital mentee on managing and/or working with people, navigating a career, growing profits, and not killing your coworkers along the way. Now let's join the consultant, Hayden Shaw, and the millennial who fixes Hayden's iPhone, Seth Tower Hurd.
It's a consultant and the millennial. When you talk millennial CEOs, the first thing you're probably going to think is, oh, it's some kid that went out, got $1 billion from somebody in Silicon Valley, and then they built an office with a slide in it. And people just go down the slide, and they don't have an actual product or actual revenue, but they have a lot of buzz.
Do you have an office with a slide in it? Because if so, I'd like to come over.
The slide's been ordered, but it never showed up, so I don't know where it went.
Nobody ever gets the slide.
Hey, our guest today is Adam Kail. He is the CEO of Harrison Gray Search in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and also actually ran another successful business that you're in the process of transitioning out of full-on retail, correct? Called Brothers Leather. I carry Brothers Leather bag. I'm a pretty big fan.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you're relatively young by CEO standards, and you don't fit the, I guess, kind of the silly negative stereotypes. And one of the things that you've talked about a lot is that you build process-based businesses, right?
Yeah.
It's a really big deal to you. So first of all, can we just define that?
Yeah, I think a process-based business is a business that operates out of a number of core processes that all flow up to a main objective, and you build talent around people that fit into those processes and can execute based on those processes.
Okay, so did you start that when you started all by yourself? You left another search firm, executive search firm, and wound up going out on your own, right?
Yep.
So did you first have to lead yourself in that arena?
So it started back when I worked in Denver for a couple of startups, and I worked for a CEO who was really, really passionate about creating really good processes and then plugging people into those processes, and that would result in whatever the goal was, right? And so when I took that same mentality when I went to work for another search firm, and I kind of, just kind of by myself kept to the same process, or built a process and kept to it and was really successful. So then I said, okay, I can duplicate this process. And so, when we started Harrison Gray Search, one of the first things we did was build out our entire workflow and our map of how we want to engage with clients and how we want clients and candidates to engage with us. And we just built processes around that. And so it's funny, we just we've been having meetings all this week around, 2018 redeveloping some of our core processes, tweaking them, because you always have to be tweaking them, and then making sure that everybody's doing them. So it's really apropos of this conversation, because I literally this morning was typing up process maps. So it's really interesting timing, but yeah. And
I just wanted to start with that because of the fact that we talked before on another show that I've been involved in, that business is a path to fame now. Entrepreneurship is a path to celebrity status. It's a path to getting into the cool clubs or in New York and LA and getting your name on lists. And a lot of times when people go into that with that kind of motivation and not love for the game of business, what happens is that it just winds up in total chaos.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a good point to just start with where do you start at? And that was you starting with yourself, not just going all willy-nilly. And this is something, by the way, that I think Hayden and I definitely could take a page from your book and get better at for sure.
Yeah. I think it's just creating a really good plan, an execution plan, and then tweaking it. People sometimes can get rigid and stick to a plan that doesn't work, but really tweaking your plan, making sure that it works, and then plugging people in and holding them accountable to that plan. Creating actionable goals like revenue, which it's funny you mentioned that in the intro. I have a few friends that work for startups that don't have any revenue, but somehow they're 55 people with millions and millions of dollars in capital funding, but they've been around for a year, 15 months, no revenue. And my whole thing is, we have no funding, no capital investment, I own our companies outright, and it's just about our goal is revenue all the time. So cash solves all problems, and it's true. So
it is way true. Cash solves all problems. The how did you? Well, a couple of things I think are really interesting with this. And back in the day when Apple got started up, and Wozniak were kind of the entrepreneur, young future wave. Peter Drucker, the father of modern management, wrote in an interview said, they're the exception to the rule. The people who tend to be the most successful entrepreneurs are people who've worked someplace else, seen the inside of the business, and then figure out a faster, easier, more efficient way to do it. In other words, he said they learn how to make a payroll, they learn how to, but what he's really saying, Adam, is they learn what the processes are, and they come up with ideas on how they're going to do it differently or better. And that's their that's their distinction. And so I think it's interesting. People were like, oh, a millennial leader, what kind of, as Seth said, what kind of technology did he do? Well, the technology was the technology of understanding process and tweaking process. So I think it's fascinating that you're, kind of an old soul in business in terms of the other side of experience, kind of getting it. So what was it about the processes that attracted you? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to go to a gunslinging place. Why'd you stay with that agency in Denver that was process oriented? What about that attracted you back in your younger days?
So I think what was so with my startup in Denver that I worked for, I was responsible for roughly like 29 million in revenue for my team, and it was a $100 million business.
That's no small number. You got almost a third of the shop.
Yep. And so we had about 300 people in my purview. So we had like a retention team, a support team, and like a reporting analytics team, which all kind of drove into that number. And our funds were our revenue was recurring revenue that we were trying to keep. Right, sales won all the business. We were trying to keep it, and so. Long story short, the only way, and this is because the guy that I worked for, who was like a mentor of mine, changed my life in a way. The only way we're going to do this is by getting people on the same page and doing the same thing and being able to measure. KPIs and metrics are huge for me. You can't. One of my other mentors in life told me you can't manage what you can't measure. So the first thing we did was figure out everything that people were doing, why they were doing it. Then we figured out what was working, what wasn't working. And then we took everything that was working, tried to make it better. And then we tried to take our bottom people and move them to the top. I'll never forget this. My boss calls me in, sits down. He's like, bring me your top 5 names of your team out of 300 and give me the bottom 5. So I came with the top 5, came with the bottom 5. And he goes, move those those bottom 5 to the top 10. That's your goal. And I moved 1. 4 got fired, but 1 moved up in the top 10. And it was because of him, not because of me, but my focus was on him. And I was thinking about it all differently. So I plugged this person into a process, kind of got him behind the process, understood the vision, right? You have to have a good process. You've got to have it bought in, So that's what we did. And I saw there that process works. If you can create the right process and get people bought into that process, they'll do the work. I can't retain 30 million by myself. We had these people that had to do it. And so, a process is what did it, and hard work.
Can I jump in on a couple pieces here?
Yep.
The first thing is that it's really, really cool that your boss had you focus and that you had 1 out of 5 success. I feel like a lot of times that's the best you're going to have with a staff that size. And the other thing is, if you don't move those other bottom 4 on, you're going to lose somebody, I bet, in the top 50th percentile who just gets sick of working with them.
Yep.
Or 2 or 3 people. That's one of the things that, I really learned along the way before I started my own company the second time, was that if you don't fire people who are lazy and really hard on their fellow man, somebody else is going to leave because they're tired of them.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing too. We turned over, when I came into that position and that role, turned over 80% of our staff, and it was just because they were used to a different way. When you bring a staff that has no metrics or KPIs, and then you drop KPIs and metrics on them, it is a shakeup, to say the least. I spent more time in HR than I did at my desk, just dealing with all this stuff. And so yeah, to your point, you got to be able to have those tough conversations, give people a chance. And it's up to them. If they want to do the work and abide by the new process, the new KPIs, they have a chance. Like 20% said, I'm going to do it. And they did it. And so it's up to people, but you're right. You've got to be able to have those hard conversations, move people on. It's better for them anyway. They're not liking their job. They're not thriving in life. And then, and work your best to move people up, move them up or out. That's the goal.
All right, this is what I do, all the time for the last 20 years, is help organizations with the people side of that stuff. And that's exactly right, Adam. What I love most about metrics and about a process is that the boss is no longer the jerk.
No.
The KPIs are the scoreboard. I'm here in Chicago, and the coaches didn't have to tell the Bears that they're losing. The whole world could look up at the scoreboard and go, I don't think we're making the playoffs this year. Yeah. And so in many companies that don't work off of KPIs or scoreboards, the boss then has to go, hey, I don't like what you're doing. And so the boss becomes judge, jury, and executioner, and the boss moves into the jerk category. And when they feel guilty about being a jerk, or they're tired of being a jerk, then they go back and over accommodate people, and then they have underperformers. And the answer is get some scoreboards, some metrics, and some KPIs so that you can coach people on performance. You don't have to yell at people about whether or not they're winning or losing. Exactly. That is the single most brilliant management move a person can make. So I think the question that a lot of people would ask is, sounds great, where would a person start? If a person was, if a person's an entrepreneur, or if you're a manager in an established organization and you're playing that, let me tell you how you're doing kind of thing, because there isn't clarity on what the goals are, what the wins are, what the measures are.
What's your goal? Is it you're trying to increase, if your goal in your operation is to increase talk time, that's the overall goal, right? So, or, finances are easy to raise, then you work on a process. Okay, let's say talk time. I want to get all my agents keep them on the phone for 3 hours a day. How do I do that, right? So then you create a process that would get people on the phone for 4 hours a day. And so what does that look like? All right, so you need to be making, an available status, 80% of the time you're not on the phone. Start there. Then move on. You basically create these benchmarks. You know your business better than I do. You create these benchmarks to get people there. What are your best people doing? Every team has someone that's at number one, and every team has somebody that's at the very end. So what are you doing? What is number one doing? Look at what they're doing and make that better too, and help them say, okay, this person's really successful. Let's follow I would sit with people and watch them and take notes feverishly on what they were doing and bring that back and say, let's create a process around this person's, what they're doing, because it's working. So yeah, I think, but you have to start with the ultimate goal. I think people get lost and they create these huge process maps and they don't go anywhere.
If we were closer, I would high five you. I would hug you. I would do really uncomfortable things because
it's fine with me.
That, my friend, if you're listening to this, start there. What's the goal? What do successful people do? Your process is what is the behaviors that successful people do that middle performers do sometimes when they're in the mood, or when they don't have other perhapses. Perhaps I can get to it next week. Perhaps I can. The successful people say no to a bunch of other stuff, like the slide in the break room, right? Mm-hmm. They don't go down. They're like, once this is done, once I get my calls made, once I get my on the phone time, then I can take a break. Totally. Everybody else goes, hey, when I get all caught up, when I get my email done, when I get back to these people who had questions, then I'll get on the phones. Yeah. And I'm tired today. My kid was up. I'm tired. I'm not in a phone day. I'm going to do email for a couple hours till I wake up.
Yep.
Your best performers would never do that. They go, man, I need 2 cups of coffee so I don't suck on the phone today because I'm going to do the phones before I have lunch.
Exactly. 100%. The people that I have a guy that we just hired in the last few weeks, and I mean, he gets in. Our day starts at 8, and at 8:01 he's making his first call, and that tells more. I'm going to give him more grace if he has a bad day or he comes short on a KPI this week, because I just love the mentality of when I come in, I'm starting my day, I'm getting on the phone, like I'm just starting, because there's so many people that do exactly what you just said. Just my kid was up last night. My kid was up too. Like our customers' kids are probably up too. Like they need you, and let's go make it happen for them today. So I'm with you 100%.
It's interesting. There's some research out there on what high performers do, and I love what Craig Christensen, a guy that coaches sales managers, says. He's great. In case you're looking for develop your sales managers, by the way, plug for Craig. Craig's like, the problem average performers have is they don't love enough. They don't love the people they serve enough to do what the high performers do, because they really do believe that people need what they do.
Yeah.
And they're screwing people over if they don't help them. And so his idea was, you up your level of love for the people you serve. You do things you don't feel like doing. And so that makes complete sense to me. What's your goal? And the process is simply, what are the behaviors successful people do? What trips people up with processes? When people who are new to it or start to design processes, what can trip people up as they're designing them, other than they're not clear on what they ultimately want? What else have you seen people get stuck on?
I've seen them get stuck on things that don't matter in that process. So you kind of like a thesis statement, if we're going back to like fourth grade, thesis statement for a paragraph, you're like, the dog climbed up the tree. The dog found the tree. Look, there's a cat. Like, that's kind of like, that's kind of what happens in process, I think, is people say, okay, they're going to need to make X many calls a day. How do they make those calls? Well, they should really think about getting on and sourcing this and this and this and this and this. And next thing you know, they're tricking about all these processes that really don't have anything to do with the ultimate goal. So I've seen people get lost there. I've also seen people get lost thinking like, no one's going to do this. Like, it's overwhelming. Like, they start to build it out, and it's overwhelming. Like, my team is not going to do this. People do not want to make this number of calls. I'm going to lose my whole team. There's got to be a better way to do this, or this isn't realistic, and they lose energy because looking at it is daunting to them from a leadership standpoint, let alone trying to convince people and influence people to want to do this, because they have to want to do it. Like you said,
it's change management.
Yes, exactly.
And most of us hate it. And so let me redraw my goals to fit the people on my team.
Yep.
So we'll never be able to beat New England. So let's just be amazed that we beat Pittsburgh last week. Yeah, right?
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. So let's just be celebrating that. Yeah. Let's redraw the goal based on the team.
Exactly.
Instead of say, maybe 80% of our team's going to leave if we say, here's what you got to do this week. If we're going to hit this goal, we're responsible for it.
100%. 100%.
Hey guys, we are unfortunately kind of coming to the end of our time here. I would really love to get Adam back on, as we only hit about half of what I had in my head to ask you. So maybe in the next 60 days we can do this again if you're all right.
Yeah, yeah. The thing that I would say that I wanted to point out too is, like you said, like I'm an old soul from a millennial. I'm at the very top of the millennial. Right. Like, I'm like a year. My friends are not millennials. They're like 33, right? I'm 32. Right. Or 34, but I too have a challenge because I do things differently than a lot. Like my brother has a company, he's a part of it, and I do things way different than they do things. And I think they probably fit more of the millennial style of leadership. But what I struggle with too is understanding, and this can maybe the next time we talk, but like it is like I'm hiring true millennials 10 years younger than me, who have had a phone since fourth grade, and I didn't have a phone until 11th grade. And I struggle to lead well and to figure out ways to motivate and to understand. And I'm only 10 years out. So I think there's a huge need in 20 years or 10 years even to figure out, like, what does this look like? How do you motivate? Because people are like, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't make me feel good. It's not I can't put a filter on this. I am not going to make that number of calls. But I am going to do an awesome Instagram story today. And they're just not going to do it. Like, other people are just like, no, that's not how you win customers. I'm like, I don't know. So anyway, that's a good conversation for next time, but it is challenging. I do not know what I'm doing as far as leading millennials very well. And I'm not a millennial in my heart, I don't think.
I'm an elder millennial also. That's an entire different conversation.
That is, man.
Haydn is out on the road for basically all of January, so I think we're going to have to hit that in February. If you just want to shout out, Harrison Gray real quick, and then we'll talk to you in a month.
Sounds good. So Harrison Gray Search, we help companies find talent, whether that's an executive level or you're looking for a senior project manager. We also have consulting services talking about this kind of stuff, looking at a sales process, looking at an internal process, looking at a hiring process. And we also help you outplace people if you have layoffs coming or anything like that. We also have services to help with that. And our website's harrisongraysearch.com.
Hayden, any final words?
Oh, sorry. I'm No, so many words. This is fun. And I just posted something to our internal Facebook group yesterday about working with a group of younger millennial managers who are like, we should not even talk about generations because it just increases bias. Yeah. What's so fun is I said, hey, I got a lot of older millennial managers who are saying to me, I need some ideas, some old soul. Doesn't matter what generation you are, processes work, and process-driven business works, and hiring to process works. The challenge is, as the DOD said to me when I met with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, how do you get millennials to follow processes? And it's a great question. I'd love to come back to it. And what it illustrates is, I don't care what generation you are, talking about generations doesn't create unconscious bias or even conscious bias. It just gives us the ability to say, I'm not getting it. How do we get better together? And an Instagram story is not going to get your grandfather to move assets under management and financial services. And it's also not going to help a 43-year-old say, I need some help with outsourcing for what you're doing now. It's just, that's not going to be where they go. No. So know your market, know who makes the decision, who's got the money, and never been more interesting to get new people in the new world to fit into processes. I just think you closed up with another great barrier. How do you get people to do it? Yep. I hope you have an incredibly profitable week. And I'll quit talking, Seth.
Yeah. You can find out more about Haydn at peopledrivenresults.com. You can't have him in the month of January because he's all full up, but you can check out some more there. As a reminder, Adam is at Harrison Gray Search. You can go ahead and look those guys up. And Adam and I and Haydn will return while two of the three of us get to reprise our role as crotchety old angry millennials.